Bob Hope was perhaps the most famous entertainer of the 20th century. For over half a century, he brought rapid-fire jokes and screwball antics into American homes through every major entertainment medium. But behind the scenes and beyond the laughter, a complex narrative unfolded, revealing a side of Bob that left many questioning their admiration. Join Facts First as we look into the journey as to why the adoration for Bob Hope seemed to wane by the time of his passing. Hope's rise to fame. Bob Hope's road to stardom began humbly in vaudeville. Born Leslie Towns Hope in 1903 in Eltham, England, his family immigrated to Cleveland, Ohio when he was 4. As a child, he entered Charlie Chaplin look-alike contests, dreaming of fame. Hope earned money for his family as a newsboy, shoe salesman, and amateur boxer. His first break came in 1925 when he partnered with George Byrne for a vaudeville dance act billed as Hope and Byrne. After going solo, Hope struggled on the vaudeville circuit, performing comedy and emceeing shows. His big break came in 1936 when he was asked to perform a revue at Broadway's legendary Palace Theater. The gig catapulted him to stardom. He went on to star in several Broadway musicals through the late 30s, introducing many of the songs that became his trademarks, like Thanks for the Memory. In 1937, he moved to Hollywood to pursue film. His first movie, The Big Broadcast of 1938, featured his signature tune Thanks for the Memory and cemented his fame. A string of successful comedies followed for Paramount, including The Cat and the Canary and Caught in the Draft. During WW2, Hope partnered with crooner Bing Crosby for the first of 7 hit Road 2 pictures, establishing the duo as one of Hollywood's top box office draws. By the early 40s, Hope was also dominating radio. His weekly comedy show for NBC drew as many as 20 million listeners and remained in the top 10 for over a decade. Unlike other radio comics who played invented characters and skits, Hope performed snappy topical monologues full of current event jokes, essentially inventing the modern stand-up format. A team of writers fed him hundreds of quips each week on index cards. He further cemented his fame by performing for American troops abroad. He began organizing camp shows shortly before Pearl Harbor. When war broke out, Hope eagerly threw himself into USO tours to boost morale. He performed his first European shows in 1943, traveling perilously close to combat zones to entertain grateful GIs. He performed nearly 200 shows over 10 tours during World War II alone, becoming an almost mythic figure to troops far from home. By the 1950s, Hope was undeniably the most famous entertainer of his era. He hosted sold-out shows in vaudeville, Broadway, movies, radio, and TV. He published best-selling books and starred in comics bearing his name. Hope was less a comedian than a one-man conglomerate. His Christmas tours entertaining troops became a national tradition, even as the Vietnam War intensified. For over 50 years, he embodied laughter and patriotism. So how did he fall from such heights? Cracks emerge in Hope's wholesome image. On the surface, Bob Hope presented himself as a paragon of clean, wholesome American entertainment. He started his radio shows by proudly proclaiming he was an American entertainer, bringing good-natured fun into households. He cultivated his image as a grinning, harmless jokester devoted to his wife Dolores and their 4 adopted children. In truth, Hope concealed a lifetime of compulsive womanizing that belied his harmless persona. Despite being supposedly happily married since 1934, Hope routinely cheated on his wife with a revolving door of starlets and beauty queens. Publicly, he upheld his reputation as a faithful family man and patriotic American above reproach. But industry insiders glimpsed a very different picture. On tour, Hope surrounded himself with a harem of young actresses outside his hotel room, granting intimate access to whichever ones struck his fancy. Comedy writer Sherwood Schwartz recalled there were always 3 or 4 beautiful girls waiting to get into Hope's room wherever they went. Hope carried on numerous long-term affairs barely hidden from his wife, Dolores. In the 1940s, he began a years-long relationship with actress Marilyn Maxwell, known to many as Mrs. Bob Hope. He bought apartments for lovers like Barbara Payton for convenient rendezvous. Even into his 80s, Hope continued seducing young women like writer Sandy Vinger. When former mistress Payton revealed sordid details to Confidential magazine in 1956, Hope used his clout to suppress the story, But the public image of Hope as a smirking yet harmless family man grew harder to maintain. His lecherous backstage antics increasingly resembled an abuse of power by a privileged male celebrity. His enduring marriage to Dolores, supposedly 69 years long, may itself have been a sham. Biographer Richard Zoglin turned up no marriage certificate for the couple, fueling rumors they never legally wed. Changing attitudes leave Hope behind. During the cultural upheavals of the 60s, his trademark brand of comedy came to seem increasingly dated. As the Vietnam War escalated, Hope enthusiastically supported the military effort and frequently entertained troops with jokes mocking anti-war hippies and beatniks. He palled around with President Nixon and aligned himself with the World War II generation's establishment values, which alienated him from youth counterculture. Hope appeared clueless when it came to changing attitudes about civil rights, women's lib, and sexual freedom. A 1970 TV special on feminism portrayed career women dusting chairs between meetings, showing just how blind Hope was to strides women had made. His leering gags about girls and buxom beauty queens, once deemed harmlessly rakish, now felt offensive and sexist. As tastes evolved, Hope stubbornly stuck to the same formula. He continued touring for the USO, even as his health sharply declined in his 80s and 90s. His annual TV specials grew increasingly dated, full of hoary topical jokes aimed at older audiences. Johnny Carson grew so frustrated with Hope's faltering guest spots on The Tonight Show, he deemed him his least favorite guest. A new generation dismisses Hope. In his later years, Hope embodied the suburban establishment and status quo that the baby boomer generation rebelled against. He supported Nixon in the Vietnam War when many youths decried it. According to critics, he expressed backwards views on women, minorities, and homosexuals that seemed bigoted and woefully outdated. His jokes relied on sexist stereotypes, such as portraying a woman politician dusting chairs between meetings. Feminist groups reportedly flooded Hope with angry mail after one backwards-looking TV special on women's rights. Pundits argue Hope's job was to poke fun at powerful institutions, but he had become one of the powerful himself. By the 1970s, younger comedians viewed him as part of the problem, an elder statesman defending the status quo. Hope's smug establishment persona prevented him from speaking to the anti-authoritarian ethos of the times. Unable to evolve with the culture, he lost touch with new generations of Americans. While older audiences, nostalgic for simpler times, kept tuning in, younger viewers switched to the channel. Hipper comics like George Carlin and Richard Pryor replaced Hope as the voice of the counterculture. Once wholesomely irreverent, Hope's gags now seemed to enable the patriarchal culture young people sought to overturn. As the tides of history shifted, Hope drifted further from the cultural shore into irrelevancy. Now it's time to hear from you. Did Bob Hope's comedy simply not age well, or did he lose touch with the times? Let us know in the comments section below.